Hey guys, it's Rob here and welcome back to a new video. So in this video we do have a new Nintendo Switch leak to talk about. This Nintendo Switch leak is pretty interesting and really is going to showcase Nintendo's wacky side if it ends up being true. There is some people who say that the Nintendo Switch 2 doesn't have any of the Nintendo uniqueness that they usually showcase on their new systems, and according to this Nintendo Switch leak that may not be true. Nintendo might be doing some pretty cool things here, so we're going to talk about that. There's also some other Nintendo Switch topics in this video if you do want to stick around after the Nintendo Switch. And of course, if you want more Nintendo Switch leaks, news, and all that great stuff, especially when it comes to the pre-order news, make sure you guys subscribe to the channel and of course leave a like. It really helps the video when you do that. So the Nintendo Switch 2 release date is closing in on us. It's gonna be in about 50 days, June 5th, and it's very exciting to me anyways. I know a lot of people are really frustrated with the pre-orders and the price and all of that stuff, but overall I think the future of the Nintendo Switch 2 is pretty bright and I'm pretty excited, albeit a little bit disappointed because I might not be able to secure a Switch at launch. When the Nintendo Switch 2 was revealed during that Nintendo Direct, a lot of people were wondering, where is the wackiness? Where is Nintendo's new feature that separates this from other consoles? The sentiment around the Nintendo Switch 2 is positive in a lot of the aspects, but a lot of people were wondering if Nintendo is changing, if they are getting a little bit too full of their britches, so to speak. I mean, look at the news right here that recently dropped on April 14th. The title of this article from My Nintendo News reads as "Former PlayStation Boss Reacts to Switch 2 Game Price Increase." And this is what My Nintendo News had to say on that topic. Unfortunately for Nintendo, the pricing for the Nintendo Switch 2 and software has not been the greatest reception from fans. Not only have fans reacted to the news that has been ongoing since the Switch 2 Direct, but familiar faces that used to work at Nintendo, Microsoft, and Sony have been doing so the same. One of them is former PlayStation boss Shawn Layden. Layden's reaction to the highest Switch 2 game prices came from PlayStation-driven video interview. In it, Layden says, "Right here you see, wow, that's kind of a hefty price hike from Switch 1 to Switch 2 and now $80 for a game. But if it's only the place where you can get Mario, then you have your wallet out and you buy into it. And Donkey Kong and Zelda. That first party exclusivity kind of mitigates the sticker shock, if you will, and these price hikes because you want the content and you want it bad." And it's not only that, Reggie also came out and said some stuff on how Nintendo's charging for that Nintendo Switch 2 exclusive game that kind of showcases what the Nintendo Switch 2 can do. So it really does seem like overall some of the sentiment about the Nintendo Switch 2 and just Nintendo in general is kind of negative, and that they're going in some other sort of path that people don't want them to go, especially when it comes to the pricing of the Nintendo Switch 2. Whether that actually happens really remains to be seen. I guess we'll see in a couple years if Nintendo actually ends up failing just because of a whole bunch of horrible decisions. And one person might look at all of this and say Nintendo really has changed, but they apparently might not have changed too much, because according to Nash Weedle, a Nintendo insider who recently has leaked a new 2D Metroid game, we covered that in the last video, click the top right corner of this video to watch that. He has a new Nintendo Switch leak and this is what he said. Leak expressed the Switch 2 camera is going to have a different function that may have not been revealed yet. In addition to its use in certain games in different ways, in game chat, some of its uses may be related to patents we've already talked about, AR, VR, profiles, etc. Now the interesting thing here is this is not the first time Nintendo has dabbled in those kind of things. If you guys remember on the 3DS, we used to actually have a lot of different AR games on the Nintendo 3DS, or at least capabilities anyways. I don't know if you guys remember this, but they used to have those AR cards and you'd aim the 3DS camera at it and it would pop up something out of the card. I always thought that was kind of cool. I played around with that, and also the mini game where you would shoot in like 3D space with the AR version or AR capabilities of the Nintendo 3DS. That was pretty fun. With that being said, let's continue with what Nash Weedle has to say. He has a lot of screenshots and information on those patents that will give us more into this, and this is what he said. Camera as an improvement for motion detection. We have seen that in games like Mario Party. It can be used as a Kinect, but combined with Joy-Cons. And then he does showcase some of the different things that are on the Nintendo Switch 2 patents, and you can see them on your screen right now. Now the interesting thing here is that there are other things in here, like patents for actual VR for the Nintendo Switch 2 and AR functions. You're also seeing those on the screen, and I think that would be pretty cool. I really don't know what games they would use that in, but it would be really cool. Now, from what I understand, the actual camera on the Nintendo Switch 2, or not on the Nintendo Switch 2, but the function for that attachment is actually pretty solid. The reason why it runs pretty poor is because the system itself is making it run poor so it can make room for the system to run better. So if they were to use some sort of AR function, I'm sure it would run a lot smoother, and I think that's where things can get really interesting, especially when it comes to this patent right here. Now, a big question here is, why didn't it come with the Nintendo Switch 2, right? If this is supposed to be Nintendo's big gimmick for the Nintendo Switch 2, you have to wonder, well, why isn't it with the Switch? Well, one thing is remember, we talked about the prices, how Nintendo is changing and moving with their system. Well, this is what Nash Weedle had to say on this. The camera would have come with the standard as a gimmick for the console, but to keep the production costs down, it would end up released as an accessory. So that is an accessory, and remember, accessories are going to be more expensive, and also they're going to just overall be harder to find as well, as far as we know so far. Could not end up being the case. We'll see when the Nintendo Switch 2 is released, but as far as we know, that might be a possibility. Keep that in mind. But anyways, continuing. Nintendo patents on augmented reality and VR technology indicate Nintendo's continued investment in the technology. So that's pretty interesting, but really the question is, how exactly would Nintendo actually use this? Especially when it comes to like VR and just other titles, or not other titles, other capabilities, because it really does seem like something really cool could happen. And that's a big question, like what would Nintendo use this? What games could benefit from AR and VR? Well, specifically when it comes to AR, remember when I talked about the 3DS AR cards, how you would point the camera and things would pop up from the little card? Well, what if they did that on a bigger scale, but also for like Super Mario games? I mean, you can see in this diagram right here, they have the little AR thing on the table and they're pointing the camera at it. What if that's like a stage for Mario, or maybe the stage pops up out of the AR card? And maybe Nintendo does have a VR screen, and maybe the Super Mario World pops up out of the card. I think that would be pretty interesting. Now, truth be told, I don't think it would sell pretty well, in my personal opinion. I don't think it's going to be like something huge, something big. I feel like anytime Nintendo does any gimmicks, and really honestly any console, I mean, even with the haptic feedback on the PlayStation 5 controller, I mean, yeah, it's used, but it's not like the selling point of the console, right? It's not going to change the game, so to speak. Even with the 3D on the 3DS, a lot of people would just turn off 3D and play the games like regular. It's more of like a cool side thing rather than something that the people are going to use. In fact, I would go so far to say that the mouse on the Nintendo Switch 2 is even bigger than even the 3D on the 3DS, or let's say, remember the HD Rumble during the Nintendo Switch 1 reveal? I feel like the mouse is going to be used a lot more than any of those aspects of the Nintendo Switch 2. And if they do this AR, camera and also VR, I feel like that's also not going to be too big as well. I just don't see it working really well with the Nintendo Switch, if you know what I mean. Don't get me wrong, it would be cool to try out, but I don't see it being a big thing for the Switch. Because if you guys remember, Nintendo has dabbled with some of these things before. We have that Mario Kart game. I'm forgetting the actual name of the Mario Kart game, but you guys know what I mean. The one where you play through your own map that you make, and it's a remote control car of Mario. There's that. That's what Nintendo has dabbled, at least when it comes to some sort of AR situation. Although I do have to say, I kind of want to backtrack a bit on me not really using it, because now I just had a really great idea in my head. I don't know if Nintendo would ever do this, but what if they created some kind of Pokemon game, and like your Pokemon pop out of the ground and you're battling like that? Because remember, Pokemon is doing a stadium game. I mean, imagine if they had like an AR function and you actually see the Pokemon within the world, and maybe they do have like a VR set and you're just seeing like these mini Pokemon fighting on this little stage on your table. I'll be honest, I would probably use that a lot. Or like maybe some kind of Yu-Gi-Oh game, or some kind of monster catching game. You know what, now that I think about it, now I'm starting to see the picture if Nintendo did do something like this. I feel like they could do a lot of cool things with that. But let me know what you guys think about that down in the comment section below. Would you want the Nintendo Switch 2 to have some sort of AR and VR function, and how would you want Nintendo to use that? And do you think Nintendo has changed? Do you think the fact that there really isn't any big gimmick for the Nintendo Switch 2, if this leak ends up being fake, that is, do you think that Nintendo has changed? Do you think Nintendo is getting greedy now? I think that's something that a lot of people are wondering, and I think that's something that a lot of people do feel too as well. Let me know in the comment section below, and I will see you guys in the next video. Take care.